Chapter 3. What the night carries night does not arrive all at once. It tests the edges first. I learned that quickly. After the door, after the jump, after the world reassembled itself without asking me whether I agreed, there was a stretch of time that did not feel like time at all. Just motion. Just distance. Just the absence of the room I had been measuring myself against. Outside was not chaos. Outside was information. The ground changed texture every few steps. Concrete gave way to gravel, gravel to dirt, dirt to something softer that held the day's warmth longer than it should have. Smells layered themselves without apology. Old food, metal, plants that had been stepped on too often to remember what they were meant to be. I moved low, not because I was afraid, but because height advertises. Height asks questions. Height invites attention. I had no interest in either. The night carried sounds differently than the room had. Indoors, noises belonged to something. A fridge, a footstep, a voice. Outside, sound drifted. It detached itself from its source and wandered. A distant engine, a dog several fences away, a human laugh that did not belong to anyone I could see. I paused beneath a hedge that smelled faintly of dust and something sweet that had fallen and been forgotten. Fruit, maybe, or the memory of fruit. The leaves scratched lightly at my back when the wind moved them. I adjusted my position until they stopped. This was the first rule I learned outside. If something touches you without consequence, it will touch you again. I stayed there long enough for my breathing to settle into something useful. Hunger made itself known, but quietly. Not pain, not urgency. Just a reminder that time still mattered, even if the room no longer did. I set off again, this time following edges, walls, fences, the thin, invisible lines humans draw when they decide where one thing ends and another begins. Those lines are never as solid as they think. There were other cats. I knew this without seeing them. Their presence marked the air the way old decisions mark a place. Not hostility exactly, more like accounting. This was not unclaimed ground, but it was not defended either. A place between agreements. I crossed it anyway. The first gutter I came to ran shallow and slow, the water moving just enough to stay alive. I drank without kneeling fully, keeping my weight balanced so I could leave if the ground decided to change its mind. The water tasted like leaves and rust and something else I couldn't place. It was acceptable. That was another rule. Acceptable is enough. I moved on. Somewhere behind me, a sound shifted. Not loud, not sudden, just wrong in the way things are wrong when they are alive and paying attention. I did not turn. Turning would have been a question. Instead, I altered my path by a few degrees and continued as though nothing had changed. Whatever it was did not follow. Later, much later, I found a patch of warmth trapped between two buildings where the day had failed to escape. I circled it once, twice, then settled with my back to a wall that held no surprises. My tail wrapped in close, my head angled so one eye stayed open. Sleep outside is not rest, it is negotiation. I woke to the sound of something small skittering across stone. Not prey, not yet, just movement, just life reminding me it existed. The sky lightened in stages, gray before blue, blue before anything that mattered. Morning announced itself without ceremony. And that was when I smelled her. Not strongly, not suddenly, just enough to stop me where I stood. Some smells belong to places, others belong to moments. Hers belonged to neither. It carried the dry warmth of fur that had known sun longer than comfort required. A faint sharpness underneath, like soil that has been turned too many times. And beneath that, something steadier, something that did not hurry. I followed it without thinking. The path took me along the edge of a car park I did not recognize, then past a bin enclosure where the ground was patterned with paw prints that did not match my own. I paused there, assessed, then moved on. The smell grew clearer as the world grew brighter. She was sitting beneath a low tree that had been trimmed badly and resented it. The bark was scarred. The ground around it was bare where nothing had been allowed to grow. Sabrina did not look at me when I arrived. She sat with her body angled away, eyes half-lidded, tail loose but ready. She was thinner than I remembered, though not weak. There was dust in her fur and something else I could not name. Experience, perhaps. Or simply time. I stopped several lengths away. We did not move. This was not a reunion. This was a recognition. After a while, she spoke. Not with sound, with stillness. "You made it out," the stillness said. I answered by remaining where I was. After another stretch of time, she shifted her weight and turned her head just enough to look at me fully. Her eyes were unchanged, still sharp, still measuring. "You're smaller," her look said, not as an accusation, as data. I flicked one ear. She stood then, slowly, and walked a short distance away before sitting again. An invitation without pressure. I followed, stopping where she had stopped. We sat side by side without touching. The city moved around us. Cars passed. Humans walked by without seeing us. A bird landed on a nearby fence, watched us, then decided it had made a mistake and left. Sabrina groomed one foreleg with deliberate care. "You chose the door," she said, finally. The words were not words. They were a memory of her stare, reshaped. I did not answer. "It was the right choice," she added, not kindly, just accurately. That surprised me more than anything else. She continued grooming, unbothered by my attention. "Before you," she said after a while, "there was a farm." The word carried a wide smell, open space, too much sky. She let it sit between us. Not gentle, she went on, but honest. The rules were visible. You learned them or you didn't. I leaned forward slightly, enough to show I was listening. She told me about mornings that began before light, about animals that did not belong to humans, no matter how loudly humans claimed them, about fences that meant something until they didn't, about hunger that taught efficiency instead of fear. "That's where I learned not to beg," she said, and for a moment her gaze softened in a way that did not weaken it. "And where I learned when to leave." I thought of the room, of Bren's careful distance, of warmth offered without demand. The room was not a mistake, she said, as if she had followed my thought. But it was not the whole world. We sat in silence again. Around us, the day settled into its shape. Heat rose, shadows shortened. Somewhere nearby, a human dropped something and cursed softly. Sabrina stood. "You won't stay out here long," she said, not as a command, as a forecast. I looked at her then, really looked, at the set of her shoulders, at the way her weight balanced forward, always prepared to move. "Neither will you," I replied. She considered this. "No," she agreed, "but not yet." She stepped away, then paused. "When you go back," she said, "go because you choose to, not because the door closes behind you." Then she was gone, slipping between spaces the way she always had. I remained where I was for a while longer. The city did not change because of our conversation. It did not need to. It had already decided how to be. Eventually, hunger returned, louder this time, and with it something else. Not longing, not fear, orientation. I knew where the room was, not exactly, but enough. The night would come again. It always did, and it would carry different things this time. I stood, stretched, and turned toward the direction that still smelled faintly of detergent and old toast and a human who had learned how to wait. The door I knew now was not the lie. The lie was believing it only opened once.